Hi and welcome to video number 12 of the Hibernate video tutorial series by Lokam Chanakya. In the previous tutorial we talked about how to create the insert record method, and we created the insert record. We inserted some values into the database as well, and we checked up in the database, and you can see we have variables inserted into it with the automatic generated ID as well. In this tutorial we'll look at how we can retrieve these records using that ID, and as you can see we already created the retrieve record method over here, and it says retrieving record. Let's add over here with ID and ID, so it's just printing the ID that we're sending right now. So the first step that we'll do is we'll create a try catch block again, just like that, and we'll add exception. I'm just handling generic exception class right now in case you guys want to add a much more bigger catch statement, or multiple catch statements, so that you can catch specific records. You can do that as well. Let's just open up our particular project over here. There you go. And now the first step would be to create or initialize a transaction object, as we did using the begin transaction method, the same way as we did in the previous tutorial as well. And the next step is in the previous tutorial we used the sesion.save method to save it to the database. In order to get it from the database, we use a method called sesion.get, and the return value of the sesion.get is whatever class we mention as a persistence class. That is, the persistence class type is a type of object that's returned from the sesion.get method. So let's create a new persistence class object called p1 again, and we'll do sesion.get, and there's two parameters for the sesion.get. The last one is the ID, or the second one is the ID of the record that we want to get, and that ID we're sending as a parameter to the retrieve record method, so we use that ID over there. And the first argument is the type of class or type of object that you want to return from the sesion.get method. So that is for us a persistence class object, and you have to mention .class so that it's a class. And the next step will be to cast this particular sesion.get method so that it is a persistence class object. So just double click on this, and the cast should be added right over here, just like that. So now that we got that, we have the persistence object, and now we can use the getter methods on the persistence object to actually print whatever values we got from the database. So let's go over here and say system.out.println, and let's say printing record, and in the next step we'll say system.out.println, and we'll say record ID, and we'll print p1.get ID, and we'll come over to system.out.println, and we'll say record, or let's just say name, and say p1.get name, system.out.println, email plus get email, and there we go. We should be able to looks like this. Let me say the error over here. So it's just p1.get email. Now that we print the email as well, in this particular instance we don't have to use the tx.commit as the tx.commit. There's no operation there's no data that's being updated on the database, so there's no need for tx.commit. But one thing that we didn't do while doing the insert is we didn't close the session object, which isn't compulsory. It's not mandatory and you don't have to do it, but it is a good practice, so let's close it in the insert method as well. So the session.close, so we close the session. We use the session object to get a persistence object from the database. Then we're printing the record. If you want, you can put in a for loop and print all the records by changing the ID from over here. But we'll look into that in a later class, and there's better ways of doing that. As you know, this method just retrieves records based on the ID, but we'll also be covering advanced tutorials on Hibernate where you can actually write SQL queries or HQL queries, and there's something called criterias as well, which you use with the retrieval, and you can actually use those to specify where clauses. You can specify which columns you actually want to retrieve from the table. You can also specify different sorts of restrictions and conditions on the particular select query that you're writing. So that will be taken care of in advanced Hibernate tutorials, but for now we're just going to retrieve a record using the ID. So let's go over to main class and let's call it run as Java application, and now that's run. Let's click on 2 and it's going to ask for the ID. Let's enter 2, and there you see there's a java.lang.null pointer exception, and the particular exception that occurred over here is being printed using stack trace, and it's a pretty simple mistake that we actually did. And the mistake is that we initialized the configuration objects using the getConfig method in the insert record method, but we never did that over here, and we have to do that. We have to add that. That's why it's saying a null pointer, because we're using the session object over here, but it's actually holding a null value. So that's the reason why the exception came. No need to worry. Let's pull this console back up and clear it. Go over here, run as Java application, and once it's run, let's set 2, and give the ID as 2 as well. And there we go. We have a printing record. Record ID 2, name Chanika, email clocum2, and we can continue this, and let's call another record. Let's enter the ID as 3, and you can see that the ID number 3 is being printed as well. And in case you do not get any records, you have to handle the exception over there so that it says no records are present, because in this particular case, if we click on 1 again and we go over here and click on 2, and then we give an ID that's not present, like 6 or 7, which isn't present, it's gonna give a null pointer exception because there's no object being returned from that particular statement. So to handle that, the simplest method over here would be to go to the retrieve record over here and put a small if statement saying that if p1 not equal to null. So if it isn't equal to null, then it's printed out, but if it is equal to null, then let's not print it out. So if we do that, we can actually clear this up again, go over here and run as Java application, and we'll run it again in the console. Enter a trace as 2, enter an ID as 6, and you can see that nothing's being printed because of the null that's happening here. That means no records are there. So to handle that as well, let's just give a small system.out.println no records were retrieved. So that should help us to give a message to the user as well. It's very important to give proper messages to the users. So 2, and let's enter an ID as 6, which isn't there in the database. And there you go. This isn't the best way to actually retrieve records from the database. There are better ways to do that because you have very less control on what you're actually doing. To get better control on retrieval, we usually use native SQL queries, or we can actually use HQL, which is Hibernate Query Language, and we also use criteria, which is an advanced topic which we'll be covering in later tutorials. But for now, this is one way to get an object using from the database using the sesion.get method. We hope you enjoyed our video, and thank you for logging in. We hope to have you later. Please subscribe to our channel and like our videos. Thank you.